Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we're taking a look at Violet Hold Mythic from the Vengeance Demon Hunter point of view. And this is actually a pretty peculiar group, definitely one that I thought was upload worthy, because we do this dungeon with two tanks. Alright, this is a Bear Druid and a Vengeance Demon Hunter, as well as a regular Havoc Demon Hunter, I assume Fury Warrior? Yeah, it looks like Fury, I never actually noticed. And a priest, holy priest. Okay, so very interesting. I'm kind of, this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and I think hopefully a lot of people are. Hopefully it's on a lot of people's radar. Thinking about, say, 4 tanks and a healer in Mythic 5-mans. Now, Blizzard's reaction to something like this is kind of cut and dry. They say it'll never be possible. You'll never be able to push competitive Mythic Plus content with multiple tanks. And I'm here to show you why that's wrong. Alright, so this is not Mythic Plus. If you're not aware, Vengeance, that's not, I don't know why I said that. If you're not aware, Mythic Plus is not available on Violet Hold, so that rules that out immediately. But regardless, a very straightforward dungeon is a very good place to test just the exact amount of damage that a tank can do, especially when you have 2 of them. And you will see on many pulls, I am actually the top damage, and on many other pulls, the bear is doing more damage than any other damage dealers. Now, there is no doubt in my mind that tanks are doing too much damage currently, especially Demon Hunter. I feel like they are just ridiculous. This bear is actually way more geared than me. And he's even got, I think he's got like an 860 something item level weapon where I only have an 820 something. That's because he has the 3rd relic unlocked, which I do not. And that still, as you'll see, is not enough to make up for the difference in damage these 2 classes can put up. But regardless, that's not what we're here to talk about, okay? First things first, we'll talk a little bit about Mythic. My experience with it is kind of a little bit, I don't know, I'm on the fence. I think these are a lot more difficult than I expected. Things hit very hard, and even when I am, in my opinion, over-geared for these, there are people like this guy, the Bear Druid, who is way more geared than I am. They give out a really high item level potential with the Titan Forge and all this. You can get really high item level gear from this. I think we see a 865 piece drop when it's meant to be 840 baseline, so at 25 item level piece, if I'm right on that. I may be wrong, but regardless, yeah, you can really quickly outgear these. So the fact that I am 835, which is just 5 item levels lower than what they are supposed to drop, and I am getting hit as hard as I am, even, you know, doing as much damage I am, is a little bit foregoing defense. But regardless, I am kind of surprised. These are definitely not for the casual 5-manner. If you're doing heroics, you're probably experiencing a very easy time, and then if you're doing mythics, you're experiencing quite the opposite. So right there you see a good example. I'm not even sure what happened. I think it was one of their abilities, like, does a ton of damage, so I'm not even sure. But the point is, if I had to go right into this pack, I would probably die, and that's Violet Hold, right? It's a pain in the ass dungeon. It's very boring, but once you can get a hold of the situation, it's a complete joke. So with the second tank, I never even have to worry. But you know, as you'll see here in chat, the damage I'm doing is just simply out-threading the other tank. So he's basically another damage dealer, and not doing an exceptional job at that either. So what the benefit is of having 2 tanks, you'll see it on the second boss. It is unequivocal, absolutely absurd if you ask me, and makes me think that 4 tanks is simply just better than 3 damage dealers and a tank, because we do almost as much damage dealers, almost as much damage as damage dealers. In fact, in a lot of cases we do more, and it is a lot harder to die as a tank, which is definitely something to consider here in these 5-mans. These 5-mans are absolutely no joke, and I think that guy there says, hey man, you should let the bear tank because he is better than you at gear, basically. And I says, I'm not doing anything except my role as a damage dealer, basically. And that's just how Demon Hunter is, regardless of that. But anyway, in terms of the difficulty I encompassed here, I would say that I don't know. The Violet Hold definitely is the easiest, in my opinion, of all the mythics. There's very few dangerous situations, and most of it is actually avoidable because of you can just run right back. You know, if one person dies, the group can kind of kite the mobs around. The person comes back after a while. There's like a death timer thing, so you can't just zerg it. But it is definitely easier than any other dungeon because it's not a traditional dungeon. You're not very confined by the typical dungeon rules. In fact, there's still the levers that you can pull. Now, I haven't paid a great deal of attention to them, but you see them there, and we do end up using them towards the end. I'm not really sure how many we use out of how many, or what they do, or how they work in here, so I can't really comment on that. But having that type of damage added to a dungeon element, it really does prove it's how trivial it can become. So you'll see the chart here, guys. This will speak for itself. This is a boss encounter in Mythic 5-mans that is going to be dropping a very high item level gear, equivalent, if I guessed correctly, to at least normal of this first tier. And we are doing it with 2 tanks. In fact, not only doing it, but exceeding at it very simply because, as you see, the bear has apparently popped some CDs. I don't know anything about bear right now, but he is doing the top damage on a boss, okay? And you see I am a little bit far behind, but things will even out on other situations. Demon Hunter is not necessarily exceptional at single target. Apparently bear is, I don't know, but Demon Hunter DPS and a warrior, none of them are really outshining us too hard. In fact, one can make the statement that we are outshining them, considering our role is also to mitigate, to spend globals on our safety. Right? They are not spending globals on their safety. They're doing 100% DPS globals, which, you know, maybe that can vary, but either way, the point I'm trying to make here is that the difficulty of Violet Hold especially, and maybe other 5-mans, is vastly outweighed by just simply bringing more tanks. Even if you do slightly less damage, right? Even if we say do 80% of the damage that we would expect, like you see right now, the Demon Hunter is doing a lot of damage. I'm below him, and you know the bear's dropped all the way to the bottom. So even if we do a little bit less damage, say 40, even 50% of what you would expect a damage dealer to do, we are still doing more than enough damage to complete these dungeons. And there you see the piece right there in question, like I was talking about. Very interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. It really is interesting. You got to tell me, what do you guys think about this? Because I think this is going to be a big deal. I think this is really going to be something to talk about come Legion, come 5-man progression in general. People are already bringing in WAD, no healers to challenge modes. Now, that's for a different reason, but it basically is the same end result. Tanks are able to do so much damage that they're more valuable than a damage dealer, okay? And damage is so useful that it's more valuable than a healer. Not really in question here, but the third thing is certainly that these tanks are so survivable that they don't need a healer, and that the damage dealers have enough utility to support themselves. So that's not necessarily the same situation we're encountering here. We're really seeing a lot more of just an imbalance in terms of damage, and I wouldn't expect this to go live. I really wouldn't. You know, a lot of people said that there's no way they're going to let damage dealers lose to tanks, no matter what the situation is, reliably. Which is happening, by the way. I am reliably doing more damage than every other person in the game. All right, it's unbelievable. I know Demon Hunter itself is a bad proponent of this. Not all tanks are like this, but I think for the most part, this is a sweeping generalization here. It's just a kind of a fact of the beta. Who knows what they'll do, but regardless of this, we need to discuss it. What do you guys think? Do you think that is fine? Do you think that's healthy? And you know, a lot of people point to, I think it was Ian Hazakauskas saying that they want tanks to be able to do a good amount of damage. They want them to be able to compete, right? Because they've taken Vengeance out. Vengeance was interesting for tanks, but it was kind of broken, and they made it Resolve, and then Resolve was a lot less damage focused, obviously no damage focused, but then they increased the damage they did and just kind of focused on survivability with Resolve, and then they decided that too wasn't very useful, and now it's just kind of this Wrath type model where you do a lot of damage if you do damage constantly, and if you take a lot of damage, you're not going to be able to do a lot of damage. So I don't know. I'm not really sure how to feel about it, especially like I just said there, the amount of control and survivability tanks bring at the cost of, the globals on CC and damage in general. Really, it's just outweighed by having more tanks. Like, the more tanks you have, the more survivable each tank is. Because I guess, you fight for threat. I don't know how it's going to look in this expansion, in this landscape. I know how it looks in WoD, CMs. Basically snap thread goes to the DK, and then burst thread goes to the monk. And that is what it looks like in the landscape right now. So I don't really know what to expect with this. But in terms of Violet Hold, the dungeon is really not too scary, and you can easily get away with this. There's no Mythic Plus, there's nothing else to consider here, so we're kind of talking about a very baseline structure and organization, which is not necessarily the most competitive, but regardless, this is going to be something that people do for gear, all right? For very important gear, not just gear that is, for some reason, exceedingly important, exceedingly high item level, potentially item level outweighing that of raids, and then especially into Mythic Plus, definitely outweighing that of raids. Is looking very, very, very likely that Mythic Plus dungeons have the potential to be even more lucrative than raiding because of how many bosses you can kill a week. I know in Mythic Plus you're only going to be able to do the one dungeon, whatever, but as of Mythic, dropping potentially, upwards of 860, maybe even higher item level gear, it seems a bit insane. It really does. And as you see there, the bear admitting his faults. Demon Hunter all the way, but yeah, so I like it. I kind of like the dungeon atmosphere. I like the way the game plays right now, but I'm just skeptical. I know people won't receive this well. I love tanking. I love dungeons. I think this is a fun, healthy, competitive nature to be involved in. But I know a lot of people, like a good buddy of mine playing an Arcane Mage, he sees me do, almost as much damage as he does. Now, Arcane is very high single targets, okay, so, but he watches these dungeons go by, and every single tank, including myself on multiple tunes, is doing more damage than him and other damage dealers, and it's just kind of like, I guess, you could easily feel invalidated when not only is the tank, generating the pace of the dungeon, he's dictating that, he's not only potentially healing himself and maybe even others in some very niche situations, but he's also damaging the mobs larger than the actual damage dealers. What the hell is a damage dealer? Therefore, that's just the first thing that comes to mind. So in terms of Violet Hold here, you're going to see a great reason why this is a very a very real possibility. Now, we wiped to this boss, and I've included the wipe for a very specific reason. Just keep an eye on the chart, all right? Watch the Druid here soaring towards the top, me kind of hovering, doing decent damage the whole time. I'm just letting him have threat. In fact, you see I even waited 2-3 globals there, like a good classic raider would. It's not really the same, obviously. When you have two tanks, it's just kind of whoever does more damage nowadays, but that is still something I conceded, because he certainly does have better gear. He's probably done this before multiple times, and even as strong as Demon Hunter is, whatever, just let him do it. I'll focus on being the damage dealer. Now, this is a mechanic that you have to get on top of stairs to avoid. We're doing pulsing damage to each other, and everybody is taking quite a lot of damage, and watch what happens there. Yeah, we can wait. Let's watch it. Oh yeah, look at that. Healer's dead, and I'm alive easily, and so is the bear. Oh, and there goes the other, and that's the healer. Healer dead, and a damage dealer dead. Oh, but look who's still alive, the two tanks, right? In fact, watch what happens here in the next minute. We are considerably still alive. I even taunt off the bear, so the bear can go battle res. He doesn't seem to quite get the hint. I guess he's going to do it here eventually, but yeah, the point I'm trying to make here, guys, is that there is absolutely no reason to bring a damage dealer to this exact situation. If we just had 4 tanks, the fucking healer could have just died, and it wouldn't have even mattered. We would have just finished it, because I have the amount of CDs, as you see there, to survive that type of very high damage, even without a healer. And the healer dies again. Now both damage dealers are dead, and you're gonna see. I mean, this is testament to it. Watch this. Obviously, this mechanic kind of punishes stacking up, so I'm not really surprised that we survived this easily, because there's nobody else there to explode on us. But still got health. I'm still alive. And if things were slightly different, we probably could have killed this boss. Maybe, I don't know. We didn't die as quickly. We kind of had a little bit different situation here, but yeah, this is a boss of a Mythic 5-man, which I consider difficult, and it's kind of trivialized by more tanks, so I really don't know what else that can even be said about that at this point. I guess we'll talk a little bit more about the actual specs. In terms of Demon Hunter, damage dealer, Havoc, Demon Hunter, okay. This is another concern. A lot of people are kind of concerned in general with the class. I think Vengeance is really, really fun and really engaging. I don't understand how you could say otherwise, to be honest. I played it a lot, almost 4 days played now across 3.5 weeks, and it's a very enjoyable spec, but people are having a very big complaints with Havoc for, I guess, an obvious reason. Basically, the class is literally the definition of one button. And now, typically, this is a statement that I think is absolutely retarded. I absolutely hate when people say, "Oh, it's press one button, lol, XD." Like, it's not true. 99% of the time, it's never true. It's just not how the game is played. You know, this 1, 2, 3 button thing. This is not. I mean, if you're talking about Classic, oh yeah, Fable Classic. Yeah, by the way, best damage dealers in the game, that they had actually 2 buttons, you know. But in WoW, Warlords of Draenor, and now especially Legion, some abilities removed. People continue to say, blah 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 blah. They removed all the abilities. You only have 1 button. Well, for Demon Hunter, this is actually true. Their number 1 damaging ability is a single button, and if you actually watched, like, you know, I don't have high collection data here to show off, but if I did, you would see that 99% of the damage a Demon Hunter does is with an ability called Annihilation, which is the Metamorphosis empowered ability Chaos Strike, which is your spender, okay? And the reason it is so potent is because in Metamorphosis form, when you crit, you do not spend, so you can just spam it again, which is very useful. Obviously, a very good ability here. And this mechanic just, I don't know, it just seems to really blast us here. I don't know what we're missing. The healer's just gonna die, I think, yeah. And I mean, even I almost die. I guess, you know, it's just a difficult part of the fight. But anyway, back to Vengeance. Or back to Havoc, actually. Havoc is, yeah, it's really basic, and I think even though they have a very cool, like, niche, mobility-focused kit, their actual damaging breakdown is literally 1 button. Now, of course, that means damage dealt. I'm not talking about 1 button and you do 100% of your damage with Annihilation. You have to actually use Metamorphosis properly. You have to be able to have enough crit to be able to do this. You have to actually be engaged on the boss. You need to know the mechanics in order to be able to stand still in DPS like this for 30 seconds, which I believe is the duration of Metamorphosis. These things are important. These are not 1 button, quote unquote. But in terms of the DPS chart, you literally do, I mean, you could easily do 100% of your damage with Annihilation, and you would be the top damage. That's just how strong the ability is, how strong the spec is in general, and I guess overtuned. So yeah, maybe there is some concerns there. I think for the most part, a lot of the 1 button nonsense is really, really overdone and not true in any way. I've never agreed with that, no matter what version of the game we're playing. Even back in Classic, there was other things you had to do other than press Frostbolt, all right? It wasn't just that. Sure, 99% of your damage would be Frostbolt, but the mage brought things to the raid that actually needed to be pressed, okay? So, regardless of that, what you're going to see is just, I think, no matter what happens, Demon Hunter is going to be the best of both worlds. Tank and damage is going to be excelling at every situation. And this is kind of how it goes. I think we had the same thing with Death Knights. I think we had even a little bit of it with Monk, although not so severe. I think it was more the auxiliary, the tank, and the healer. The damage dealer, I think a lot of people didn't find as strong, but it's kind of just the facts. I don't know what to say about that. I think I would definitely agree with people who said, you know, Annihilation doing too much damage and that's not healthy for the game, but I definitely don't expect Demon Hunter to be like a low DPS competitor when it just come out. You know what I mean? They're not going to make the class and make it bad, then people won't play it. So they have to keep it competitive in some way, and to say it is, you know, underwhelming that they made it so simplistic in terms of its rotation, I suppose is definitely fair. But the kit itself is definitely anything but simplistic, and if you watch me play this class, you'll understand why. Constantly switching between targeted abilities, you know, like there, right there, the leap, pressing that 3 times and then dropping the sigil for maximum burst. Jumping around constantly, you know, rotating between defensive globals and offensive globals. The Vengeance Demon Hunter is quite a boisterous class, quite a robust and different type of playstyle. But Havoc appears to be the opposite. So, don't know what to say there. Now, final thing we want to talk about here is Mythic, how it's going to go forward. And I kind of hinted on this already, but as you saw, the gear we just received there, it kind of tells the tale without me even needing to narrate it. These are going to be really important. These 5-mans are going to be very, very important. They're going to be with you throughout the entire expansion. I don't know what they can do. I don't think they'll want to change that at this point. I think what I've seen here is they really want to give people a lot to do in the game, and the best way to do that is to make gear come from all different types of sources. When you have raid equivalent gear coming from 5-mans and potentially even coming from heroics, you know, legendaries, these are going to come from these things. You're going to have to farm these. Guys, you're going to be doing 5-mans. All right, that's it, man. Diagnosis reached. There's not much else to say at this point. The expansion is going to have a lot of content. We talked about this in the last video. Almost too much content, if you ask me. But hey, you asked for it and you received it. So expect the unexpected. 5-mans are going to be a major player. Mythic 5-mans, I can't even imagine what they're going to look like. And especially with this sorry lot, man. You see that priest just stand in that AoE and die. It's like, oh boy, we're gonna have a fun expansion, man. Make sure you guys got a guild, all right? If you don't have a guild, hit me up, man. Metro, Firetree, US, Horde, Metro, LOL, Paladin name. We'll do stuff together, man. We'll make plays, but that's pretty much all I got. So final 2 packs of this dungeon you're gonna see here are killed with the beam. We'll talk about that as it happens, like the built-in mechanic. I don't really know what to actually say about that. And there I see how much that damage actually was to kill the priest there, and I survived easily, you know. So let's see. Here's a pack coming up, and I don't really get a good glimpse of it on camera, unfortunately. But the guy does it. I pop everything. I go fucking full ham, and the guy kills it with the beams. And my first notion is like, God damn it, man, why'd you do that? I popped everything. I popped Metamorphosis. But it's actually a good thing, right? Like, you should be doing this. I don't know how many we leave up, but I assume we left a few up because we only use it like twice here. Kills that trash, and then it actually kills this guy who I just kind of, I'm calling him mini boss. I'm not really sure what else he would be considered, but you can use multiple on him. Maybe we do use them all. I think you could use like, I think it does about 25% of his health, maybe a little bit larger than 25, maybe closer to 30. But either way, yeah, we use it again there, so kind of kills the boss. Now, unfortunately, guys, this recording is cut short because the final boss we were fighting, engaging, and the the server decides that we don't need to play the game anymore, man. It goes offline. And when the servers go offline, when they crash in the Legion, not Warlord's Strand, the Legion beta, you leave the instance group, and that forces the instance to do a hard reset, and that is the end of the group. I'm not going to do this whole dungeon again, but to summarize, the main point of the video was to talk about the 2-tank situation in this dungeon, especially a very interesting concept. I'm glad I was able to capture it on film, and not only capture it, but to illustrate the success that it has. I mean, we completed the entire dungeon with 2 tanks, okay, guys? Maybe that doesn't sound crazy, you know, it doesn't sound like absurd, but it's definitely kind of beckoning a question here, which I'm kind of scared to answer. So hopefully you guys will comment, tell me what you feel about that. Thanks for watching Violet Hold Mythic, Vengeance Demon Hunter point of view, and we will see you guys in the next video.